We are coming off of a fun holiday, especially for the kiddos, Halloween. It's always a time to run door to door, trick-or-treating, no doubt wearing the parents out, all the while accumulating piles of candy. And I'm sure in part will be consumed by the parents. After all, didn't they work hard to earn it, right? Well, all this talk of sugar, which seems to be present in just about everything we consume, from candy to ice cream to drinks, it made us think about a recent study that came out talking about the potential dangers of sugar. CNN highlighted an article titled "Sugar and Cancer, Is There a Link?" And in it, they point to a 9-year-long research project published in the journal Nature Communications, in which they discuss a relationship between sugar and malignant tumors by examining yeast cells. So to go in depth and to put this into layman's terms in this trending medical topic is Dr. Ali Kezrine. It's good to see you, sir. Thanks for being here. Yes. Because people think, okay, sugar, cancer, that's scary. What say you?
What I say is, obviously, this doesn't mean that every piece of candy that you eat is going to immediately turn into cancer. But as a caveat to this, there are studies that show that excessive sugar intake can potentially lead to obesity. There have been studies linking obesity to higher risk of cancer. So that obviously increases the interest in studying things like this. What this study looked at very elegantly, could this relationship should be evaluated to see if there's a mechanism for this relationship. What they looked at was based on this idea that normal cell handles sugar differently. So what it does is our body looks at energy and breaks down sugar to create energy based on this thing called the Krebs cycle and respiration. So you break down sugar into carbon dioxide and water.
Okay.
Cancer cells use fermentation to break it down into lactate, kind of like what yeast cells do.
Okay. And they used yeast cells in this study to find out how sugar then reacts to these cells, because they wanted to see how sugar reacts to cancer cells.
Right, because that's a way that they can accelerate being able to study this, because yeast likes fermentation.
Okay, what did they find then?
So what they found was that in this in-between step, they found an intermediary compound that activates this RAS protein, which is a proto-oncogene. What oncogenes are those in-between cells that, when activated and mutated, can accelerate cancer.
Okay, so should we be concerned if someone has cancer to lay off the sugar, because sugar is a fueler for these cancer cells? Or taking it one step back, if you do not have cancer and you're consuming a lot of sugar, should you be concerned that that potentially could lead to cancer?
So one thing with this study, it's a very interesting study in terms of the background. Based on this study, it's a beginning step. This wasn't in human cells. They looked at yeast cells that accelerated activity based on a mechanism. So it's a very interesting study based on this thing called the Warburg effect. This idea that cancer cells metabolize sugar differently than normal cells went back 70, 80 years with this guy named Otto Warburg. You know, a little bit of history. What this can tell us is, you know, this idea of moderation is an important thing. Studies have shown that people...
For people in general, people with cancer.
In general, I think it's a good thing to do. Because if you take too much sugar, you're going to get obese. You can have diabetes. There have been association with obesity and cancer. There's been association with increased blood sugar levels and increased insulin levels, potentially having impacts in not only obesity, but cancer risks.
So it might be the sugar that we're taking that's leading to the obesity, that's leading to an increased risk in cancer.
Now, other studies have actually also shown that people that have cancer could potentially have improved survivorships if they have diets that are higher in fruits and grains and vegetables, and less diets that are in charred meats and things like that. But also, studies have been a little bit less definitive in terms of cancer risk. A big study was done that showed that people that took increased sugar did not have increased risk of cancer, but there was a study that showed people that had colon cancer actually did better in terms of recurrences if they had lower sugar intake.
Okay, so let's boil it down, Doc.
So boiling down, I think based on this study and other studies, if you have a moderate level of intake of sugar, such as Halloween, that's a little bit different than if you have a significant...
Just across the gamut.
Across the gamut from that standpoint. In terms of this particular study, it's a very interesting way of looking at the metabolism of sugar intake that hopefully they can take this forward in terms of looking, is there a way of stepping in between of the way cancer cells maybe metabolize things, and if you can kind of go in there and break that cycle, could we potentially change the way cancer cells behave in terms of getting a very important part of their mechanism? Because what they found here with these yeast cells was that they, even though that fermentation acts a lot slower. Cancer cells use this to metabolize and reproduce much faster. So if we understand how that process
this is working, you can potentially stop it, which would be just a blessing. So bottom line, this can lead to advancements in how we treat cancer, but for us, everything in moderation, especially if you're battling, God bless, cancer. Lay off the sugar.
Common sense. I mean, common sense. I mean, for most of us, do we need this study to know that if we eat a lot of candies, it's not good for you? If our diet is a high majority of our intake is pure simple sugar, that's not going to be good for you. We don't necessarily need that.
And you know what? I'll tell you what. Next conversation is about how sugar is in so many different things that we don't even know about, because I have experienced it firsthand.
Sounds like a great study for this show to do.
Yeah, I like that idea. All right, thank you, Dr.
And Movember. This is why I look like an idiot.
No, you and Curtis are going to do something.
I had a beard. I thought he was going to grow a mustache today. I'm a little bit sad. He looks spectacular.
He looks good. That's the next segment, is Movember and what it means. All right, you can learn more about Dr. Kez Ryan website, KezRyanUrology.com. You can also listen to his radio show, The Conversation, which airs live every Saturday on WOKV starting at 5 p.m.